Is it okay to ask? I mean, you ask for suggestions, right? I feel
Yes.
so hesitant because it's being recorded. So, can we shut off the recording at the end and then discuss?
Yes.
Okay, is that a better option?
Yes, we can do that. But
Okay,
sometimes in the middle, when I ask question, that's okay too. So long as we don't prolong it too long. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah. Still one screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll get started then. So welcome everyone. We are on the 4th chapter. We're going a little slow, but we'll speed up. Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusandathami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namostu te Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pulla Ravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamayah Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Panaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamrutaduhe Namaha Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyaha Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So we are studying the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And we are in this shloka 16, 17, and 18. This is what we will cover today. So this is, a very important topic from the fact that it is something that we think we know very, very well. It is a topic that we take it for granted. It's a topic that, because we are alive, and we are alive and kicking, I should say, a term which we mostly use for us senior citizens, indicating that we're still, alive when we are active. And in that sense, we say that, well, we're doing some action or the other throughout our lives. But the question always remains is, how are we really doing all the actions that we do on a day-to-day basis? Some of them, of course, are actions which are on autopilot mode. Things like nitya karmas, that is on autopilot mode. But then there are many of the other actions which are really responsible for who we are. When we say action, obviously these actions are prompted by some desire which is within us. And it is these desires, of course, which are because of our previous vasanas. And it is those actions which really determines the type of person I am and the type of future I will have. It is those actions that I'm talking about. It is not the actions which are on, like I said, autopilot mode. So how is this again relevant to us? How was it relevant for Arjuna? And because we look at ourselves as, as Arjuna, who is, that confused person as to what kind of action he has to take. In the case of Arjuna, it was his own, that which typified him, which was his swadharma, right? It is that swadharma which he thought was going to lead to some very unpleasant consequences of killing his own brothers, his own cousin brothers, his own kith and kin. So that was causing him so much amount of mental worry. So that was one part of it, why this word action needs to be taken into account. But the second thing which we have been seeing in this chapter is, it is the same actions which actually is binding us, right? So this binding of these action is also one reason, second reason why we need to take this up. So with all this being said, let us look at this area of action and inaction. Before we go there, of course, we always like to see at least one aspect from a previous shloka. And here Meena Shankar had asked this question. When Lord Krishna says, I will teach you your karma, or what is your action, Arjuna, how do we understand in that same regard, what is really our karma? And how can one know if we are doing a karma? So this was a question which Meena Shankar had raised, because obviously this whole Bhagavad Gita has been tailored for Arjuna, because Arjuna was the one, who as a Kshatriya was supposed to do his action, but he was confused if that was the right thing for him. So in our case too, how do we know, what truly should be my action, right? What is my, in this case, karma is referring to action. Karma is not referring to the prarabdha karma and the nitya karma, prarabdha karma or sanchita karma. So the one way to understand this is really to look at, the chart or the matrix that I had shown in my previous sessions. One is, what is my role? What is my role today? For example, I may be a mother, I may be a grandmother, I may be a worker at, fulfilling my passion for as for service. So I look at that role. What does that role demand from me? So that is one way of looking at it. One aspect of looking at how can I know what I'm doing. So looking at the role now I look at that. The matrix was, I had all the karmas on the y-axis and the x-axis was the gunas, right? So looking at that role of what I'm playing today, how do I look at the guna with which I'm working with it? Is it sattvic? Is it rajasic? Is it tamasic? When we say tamasic, I probably will be a little blunt here, which is tamasic is, I look at it as only me, is this, whatever I'm doing, is it benefiting only me, myself, and perhaps my immediate family, okay? For example, let me take just simple example of, say as a grandmother, I'm looking at my grandchildren. Do I look at this grandchild who is come within my fold? Is that grandchild only just my grandchild, or is this the child of the universe? How do I look at that child, and how do I feed him and how do I take care of him, for example? So if it is, I look at the child only as me, myself, and I'm the only one who is there to take care of this child, then I might tend towards saying that it is more of a tamasic thing. Now, if I look at it as a rajasic way of looking at the same, looking after this child is, I'm looking at this child as, yes, the child is my family's child, but I'm also allowing the child to fulfill its needs for the universe. Whatever the child has to do, I look at the child as this, but also along with the child, I look at the child as, the friends of the children, to make sure the child is now getting a good environment of, good children around, good values, all that. But in all this case, still the aspect is that he or she is my child. Okay, that has not yet left me, but I'm now exposing the child to a lot of things and wanting to make sure that the child is going to be the child of the universe. So in that sense, it is a great feeling, right? Now, let's take this one step further. I recognize that this child is like any other child who is there. I have to look after the child, of course, feed them, everything that I'm doing. And also, I don't worry now what is going to happen to the child. Now, that is taking to a sattvic level where I'm doing everything I can, but it is Ishvara Arpana Buddhi. I leave it to Ishvara. Ishvara is there to take care of the child. I do not worry. I do the best I can and I leave the rest. So this is just one example I wanted to give where we can use that matrix and recognize what is the kind of karma I'm doing, and then fitting it with the gunas and how I can see, am I doing the right thing? Am I progressing? So Meena, I hope this was, this explanation was okay. If anybody else has any more thing to say, please do say it. And Geeta, don't worry if it seems like we are interrupting, but this is reflection time. But I thought in the context of Bhagavad Gita, in the context of what is my duty and action, I need to, yeah.
So the first one which you said, the child, you do it for your grandchild, that is tamasic, you said.
But if it is only, if I consider it that it is only my child,
But isn't it the duty to be performed? It's my child or my grandchild. It's my duty to take care of the kid. Then it becomes the duty. Then how can we say tamasic?
Duty, when I consider, so it is a guna aspect of it. The duty is karma. That you have to do it anyway. The attitude in which you recognize the child, that is where I'm focusing on.
Okay.
It is just
so it is in our mind. It's in our mind.
Yeah,
the attitude is in our mind.
The attitude is in my mind that this is my grandchild, and I, of course, you have to look at the child as my grandchild, no question about it. But I'm showing you just a progression of not just my grandchild, but the child of the universe,
Okay. So you're saying the duty is karma, and the gunas you're relating to the attitude.
Yes, correct. Guna is the attitude.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Now, this example can be taken for anything, but I just sort of personalize this a little bit because I know there are many grandmothers in this audience here. So just wanted to personalize this. But if anybody has anything contrary or anything more to add, please do. I just thought using that matrix, what I had before, and simplifying how we can look at it. So let's move on to, today we will chant shlokas 7 to 16. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuthanam dharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham paritranaya cha sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sorjuna vitaraga bhaya krodhaha manmaya mamupashritaha bahavo jnana tapasa puta madbhavamagataha ye yatha mam prapadyante tam sathaiva pajamyaham mama vartmanuvartante manushyaः partha sarvashah कांक्षन्तः कर्मणां सिद्धिं यजन्त इह देवताः क्षिप्रं हि मानुषे लोके सिद्धिर्भवति कर्मजा वा चातुर्वर्ण्यं मया सृष्टं गुणकर्म विभागशः तस्य कर्तारमपि मां विद्य कर्तारमव्ययम् न मां कर्माणि लिम्पन्ति न मे कर्म फले स्पृहा इति मां योऽभिजानाति कर्मभिर्न स बध्यते एवं ज्ञात्वा कृतं कर्म पूर्वैरपि मुमुक्षुभिः कुरु कर्मैव तस्मात् त्वं पूर्वैः पूर्वतरं कृतम्. So up till here, we had finished the whole section. And now we are coming to this section of what is action and what is inaction. So we'll chant shloka number 16. Kim karma kima karmeti kavayopyatra mohitaha tatte karma pravakshyami yajñatva mokshase shubhat. So this shloka, this section starts with the simple question asking what is really action, kim karma, and then kim akarma, what is inaction. Iti kavayaha atra mohitaha. So this question has befuddled, even great seers, because it's such a very subtle thing, We have, when this word kim karma, which, Krishna is addressing the same, maybe this is sort of related to what the question we had asked. So, how do I know what is my karma? So that is one part of it. But then we have to know along with that, what is inaction? We, when we're doing all these actions, we forget that there is something called a non-action. You would be doing something, but yet we don't know if what I'm doing can be classified as an action or as a non-action. So that is a part that we're coming into, and we'll be talking about it quite a bit in detail today. So, te karma pravakshyami. Please explain that to me, which is, this I will explain to you. Sorry, this is Krishna saying that I will explain that to you, because very important, what is in it there for me, right? Why should I even care about action and inaction? Something that it's like breathing, suppose somebody says, do you want to know what is the meaning of breathing, or why are you breathing? Of course, we would say that, well, breathing is the action of life. If I don't breathe, I'm going to die. We can all say that. But have you ever thought more deeply into, this aspect of breathing? And we would say, yes, of course, I know that, because that is where the whole science of pranayama has come about, where if I know that I'm breathing at least 100 times per minute, and I need to really slow down my breathing, and there's so much amount of research that has been done that if the lesser number of breaths I take in a minute, I can actually elongate my lifespan. That is very well known, right? But then this aspect, this action itself, the action of breathing, that action we have not really spent too much time thinking about it. And that is why it is actually a very subtle aspect of it, which he's trying to show here. And if I know that aspect, that will lead me to liberation. That will take me away from ashubhat. Ashubhat. So ashubhat meaning inauspiciousness, or which is that aspect of evilness, evil tendency. And you would say, what is really that evil tendency which is associated with action? So again, because we are students of Bhagavad Gita, Ashubhat is referring to samsar. Samsar, which is the aspect of keep on coming and going in this lifespan, right? So I come here, I do whatever I want, I get out, and then I take another life. So we just keep on going this. The cycle is going on and on and on. When will I ever get liberated from all this? The only time is, as per the shloka, he's saying that if you really know, knowing is that aspect, knowing what is action, knowing what is inaction, that jnanam has to be there. So that is that aspect that we want to know. So then what exactly is action? Where does it arise from? What is it? Where does it really belong? All these things, of course, we are not talking about, simple things like, cooking, running, playing, sleeping, all that. So all that we all know, that is not the aspect. But the key thing where we are going to really focus on is where does this karma rise, and the aspect, the performer aspect of it. And here I'm just telling you, just a simple, some slides on today. When I look at action, I only look at, this SMART, how specific is it? How measurable is it? How achievable is it? All these things, how realistic, how time-based. All these things are okay in the work world. In the work world, I'm trying to come up with the best possible way in which I can act and be efficient. But that is post-action. What we need to understand is the pre-action, and here again, we take this action so much for granted. Like just for example, this whole aspect of, is the sun moving around the earth, or is the earth moving around the sun? Aristotle was actually the one who said that, it is the sun is moving around the earth. And it was Copernicus, who was actually a priest and who was actually threatened with death and everything, because he said that, no, it is the earth which is moving around the sun. It took a lot of thinking, a lot of inquiry, by Copernicus, and to prove it to the world that this is what is being done. So this kind of an inquiry is sometimes so much more necessary for all of us to be able to sit down and really figure out even simple things as just action. What is really this action? Why am I really doing this? Why am I running around? Today, we attribute a lot of stress because I'm doing too much of action. But we have never really thought about this aspect for action, because we have really taken this most important thing totally for granted. So this is why, Krishna is saying, even kavayaha api mohitaha. Even the most wise people who are the most intelligent people, they are also, are so deluded. And that is why this is taken as one of the very important aspects in the 4th chapter about action. So kim karma, kim akarma iti, akarma iti kavayaha api ati atra mohitaha. And so for that reason, I will actually teach you and what is the practical value of looking at action itself. So that is what this particular shloka is. And so the practical value of this one is that if we were to really know this, even in the short time frame, it can really help us have a grip on really what is what is really stress. That much amount of jnanam is there, which we can really get out of this particular shloka here. And just as a very simple example, I think I've given this example when we were doing Bhajagovindam at one time, is, I came across this article on LinkedIn. Are you a thermometer or are you a thermostat? Why am I bringing this? Because if I really understand this aspect of, how this action is going to help me, we'll really be able to understand how we can deal with every situation or circumstance in our life. If you look at a thermometer, what is a thermometer? A thermometer is something which we measure and it indicates the temperature, right? That's all it does. It just measures and indicates the temperature. It does, if it is really cold, it gives me a cold temperature, etc. So, whereas a thermostat is something like, for example, you set it right now, I think at Michigan, we set it at about maybe 65 degrees, right? And whatever the temperature is outside, it automatically maintains that temperature, right? So this is how you want to be more of a thermostat. You don't want to be a thermometer. A thermometer will show the temperatures, what it is this month. So I don't want to show up sometimes as an angry person or sometimes as a really cool person or anything. If I can maintain that same temperature, no matter what happens. So my maintenance of an action, which is a very balanced thing, is necessary, no matter whether I experience somebody saying something negative to me or somebody saying positive to me. In all this, I need to be a thermostat, right? Not a thermometer. So for that reason, this shloka is such an important, because a jnani, a jnani is completely unmoved by anything whatsoever can happen. And only when I attain that balanced state of how a thermostat is, I can actually reach that state of liberation. And that is why this, knowing that action, knowing that jnanam behind the action is actually very important. So that is why Krishna is saying that, why don't you just listen to me? I'll explain to you more about what is action, what is inaction, etc. So let's chant the shloka. Karmano hyapi bodhavyam. Karmano hyapi bodhavyam. Bodhavyam cha vikarmanaha. Bodhavyam cha vikarmanaha. Akarmanascha bodhavyam. Akarmanascha bodhavyam. Gahana karmano gatihi. Gahana karmano gatihi. Karmano hyapi bodhavyam. Bodhavyam cha vikarmanaha. Akarmanascha bodhavyam. Gahana karmano gatihi. So he's saying karmanaha. So you have to know what is action. Karmanaha karmanaha hi api bodhavyam. Of course, it should be known. But along with that, one has to know what is vikarmanaha, which is forbidden actions. And vikarmanaha, and along with that, you also have to know what is inaction, or I would say as non-action. What is a non-action? That also should be known, because gahana karmanaha gatihi, because it is extremely subtle. This gahana means it is something you cannot even fathom. So it's very, very subtle. That also should be known. So I'm going to actually, Krishna is saying, I'm going to teach you about all these things, karmanaha, akarmanaha, vikarmanaha. So once you have a complete, thorough understanding of this, you'll really have no problem at all. You can be that thermostat, because you will be able to really understand that even when somebody is acting, even in the midst of everything that is happening, I will venture to say that even in the midst of what is happening between Ukraine and Russia, for example, to that extent, you will be able to understand what is exactly happening, and you will be acceptable, or you will accept and you will surrender to that knowledge. To that extent, he says that this three things are so very important. So when we look at this word karma, I want to simply ask you, what is your definition? How would you look at this word karma? I know we talked about the many kinds of karmas. I showed pictures and all that, but this is where we're getting into the crux of it. So let me hear from you. What is your definition of karma? You can even give a Sanskrit definition if you want. I know Pradeep is there. I don't know if you're still doing Sanskrit, Pradeep, but okay. I'm just pulling your legs.
Duties.
Yeah? So here we are looking at Meena is karma as only action, not karma as duty, or like I said, earlier, prarabdha karma, sanchita karma. We are not looking at that. Just simple, what is karma? Like, we said karma has many nuances. So we are not talking of those nuances, but just simple as an action. How would you look at it?
I think Meenakshi was trying to say something. No.
Okay. So karma here, it actually comes from, that's why I said Sanskrit, because every word in Sanskrit, comes from a particular root, right? So here karma comes from the root kr. I actually wanted to put that in Sanskrit, but I forgot. Actually, only now when I'm looking at it, I suddenly remembered. So it comes from the word root kr, which means to do. Okay. So it comes from kr, to do. And so therefore, the simplest meaning of karma is nothing but movement. Movement is karma. So chalanatmakam, we say chalanat. So chalti ka naam gadi, we use something like that. So that chalti, chal, that is referring to as karma, right? So
is it
yeah.
what it says karma means it refers to both the actions and the consequences of the action? Is that what it is?
Yes, we will be looking at that too. Like every, let's look at, what is that? Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. You can even look at it that way. So karma, typically you would look at it as a movement in a simplistic sense. But we are going to look at it a little more deeper, where we're looking at, where life, how does it refer to us, and how does it reflect in our life itself? So when we look at our life, we have portions of our life where we have activity, and then we have portions of our life where we have inactivity. Like, for example, during the daytime, I'm always acting and doing something or the other. And then when I go to sleep, I'm actually, someone would look at me and say, okay, that person is inactive. The person is not acting. But that is not true. Breathing is also going on. So there is some amount of, activity that is going on. But for a normal person, you would look at it as activity and inactivity, right? So this would be the simplest way. If you look at pretty much all the actions in the world, you will see it fits only in this 5 buckets, in this set what I've shown you. By the way, this is directly from our Bhagavad Gita book, so I just wanted to show it's there. If when you read the 4th chapter, you will see this thing there. So when we look at activity, now, activity can be either, activity which is necessary, which is necessary need to be done, or in a positive way, or it can be activity which is vikarma. So karma is positive action, vikarma is negative action. Okay, so you can look at it, or in a way you can say it as something which is prohibited action. And we are familiar with that also, like, if I'm asked to do something and I do something which is opposite to it, which is harming everybody, that is vikarma. So prohibited action, like on a very extreme case, murder, stealing, all that is vikarma. But on a simpler sense too is, or even touching fire and all that, that is vikarma. But even in a simpler sense, we can look at it as something where, I shouldn't have too much of sweets, because that's not good for a diabetic patient. So that is vikarma. But now when you look at all these positive actions that we are supposed to do, that can be broken up again into only 3 categories here, which is nitya karma. Nitya karma is our daily actions. Daily I have to keep myself clean. I have to feed this body of mine. I have to keep my mind clean. So, cleanliness from all 3 aspects of body, mind, and intellect, where we do yoga, pranayama, and then, whatever meditation, japa, doing a little bit of reading, all this comes under nitya karmas. This is something that I have to do. Then naimitika karma are those karmas which comes occasionally, and this comes either from my own family or from the society. So family meaning that, I have to attend some birthday party, or I have to take care of the 60th birthday, or, or there's a death in the family, then I have to take care of, the 10-day rituals. All these come under naimitika karma. Society sometimes may have some things on me, where the society is asking me to do some community service. All that is under naimitika karmas. Then there is kamya karmas. Kamya karma is something which is driven from the previous karma, desires. And here the word karma is probably how Meenakshi used it. So my kamya karmas, my desires which are propelling me to do something or the other. For example, it is my kamya karma, the sattvic kamya karmas, which are allowing me to listen to Bhagavad Gita today. So that is all kamya karmas. So this is how we would look at all these karmas, right? So here I want to, this distinction is actually very important too, in a very funny way, just a simple joke here. There was this one guy, he was driving his car in New York City, and suddenly he sees, a sign, and he says, okay, I'm going to just park here. So he parks, and then after some time when he comes back, there's a policeman standing next to the car and saying, why did you park here? So the guy said, well, it said it's fine for parking. He said, no, it is not fine for parking. And I'm going to give you this big fine because you parked right there. So our understanding of a lot of these actions sometimes is so very critical that we understand in its entirety. We think I can do anything and everything I want, but I have to suffer the consequences also in really understanding this, in understanding this aspect of what is action. So that is why this we need to really understand what is karma, what is akarma, and what is vikarma. So we have talked about now vikarma, which is, and then we talked about what are the 3 karmas. Vikarma is prohibited action, and akarmanaha. Now we will address what is really akarmanaha, which is very important, because that is something we don't really pay so much attention to. To come to this particular akarmanaha, Krishna now really, he will spend a lot of time from the shloka number 18th to 24th. He will talk about this akarma, because that really will give us a kind of a solution to really all our problems. And this section of 18 to 24 is considered also one of the most important aspects of Bhagavad Gita, because it's truly, you will see the Upanishadic meaning coming out of Bhagavad Gita in these particular shlokas. So far we have dealt with only Karma Yoga. This third chapter was full of Karma Yoga, and the second chapter from 47, it was Karma Yoga. And many people would say, this Karmani Vadikarasti, that is the most important shloka, right? So Karma Yoga is part of Bhagavad Gita, which leads us to Jnana Yoga. And that Jnana Yoga portion is what we will see now in this next section, which is where we'll see in detail what is really akarmanaha. Karmanya karmayah pashyet. Karmanya karmayah pashyet. Karmanya karmayah pashyet. Akarmani cha karmayah. Akarmani cha karmayah. Sabuddhiman manushyeshu. Sabuddhiman manushyeshu. Sayuktah karma kritsna karma krite. Sayuktah kritsna karma krite. Karmanya karmayah pashyet. Akarmani cha karmayah. Sabuddhiman manushyeshu. Sayukta kritsna karma krite. So the shloka is saying, Saha yaha pashyet, he who sees. Saha yaha pashyet, that person who sees. Karmani akarma, karmani akarma, that is in the action. So karmani, in the action. He who sees akarma, he sees inaction or non-action. Okay, so quite confusing, right? So how can somebody sees a non-action in an action? Okay, and the person sees akarmani cha karmayaha. The person in a non-action, the person is actually seeing an action. So he who recognizes a non-action or inaction in somebody who's doing an action, and and the person also recognizes an action being done in something where there is no action. Such a person, saha buddhiman manushyeshu. Such a person is really the person who is extremely wise among men and women, among human beings, among humans. Maybe we can look at like that, among humans. Saha buddhiman manushyeshu. And not only that, saha yuktaha. So, look at what adjectives Krishna is giving for that superhuman being. Saha buddhiman manushyeshu, that such a person is really, really brilliant, but such a person is also yuktaha, who's extremely well integrated, like the thermostat. I was giving that example. Such a person is absolutely unmoved by anything that is happening. Saha buddhiman manushyeshu, saha yukta kritsna karma krita. So 3 adjectives he's giving. He's buddhiman, he is very well integrated, saha yuktaha, and he is kritsna karma krita. That is, such a person is completely fulfilled. There is nothing more that needs to be done for such a person. He's yuktaha, well integrated, well established in the knowledge, and one who has performed all karmas. He is, he can do everything, and he is totally fulfilled. So such a person whose life is totally fulfilled is that person. So again, very powerful distinction. So only such a person is capable of being all these 3 qualities. One who recognizes a non-action, etc. So now we come to what Meena was asking before, which is, isn't karma, which can be defined as an action and for which there is, a reaction? Isn't that how we define it? But no, here we are defining karma a little differently. Karma is being defined as how is that result being affected for the person who's doing it. That is how you are defining karma here. How is, if a person does a certain action, does that action have a reaction on that particular person? So a simple example to do that is, again, you're all a few of you are grandmothers, and I can give you this action from something, with your own grandchild. You're having your grandchild on your lap. Okay, the grandchild is very, maybe just about a year, or maybe let's say it's a young boy about, the child is about going to twos. They say the terrible twos, right? So now this child is playing around everywhere, and it comes to you, and somehow the child, hurts you a little bit, is pulling your hair. Okay. And at that moment in time, do you think that the child even knows that it's pulling your hair? You are in pain, no doubt about it, but the child pulls your hair, but the child doesn't even get any consequence of the fact that it pulled your hair. It is completely oblivious of that fact. Now, if it is the same person who is now a 20-year-old, right? If it is a 20-year-old who's pulling your hair, what would you do? You would immediately, not necessarily slap the person, because we don't abuse, you'd be taken to court for abuse or something like that. The child can immediately call 911 or something, and there is a consequence that comes right away. But if it's just a 2-year-old child, you don't even worry about it. So here, in that action, you're actually seeing a non-action. So an action which leads to a consequence for the person who's acting is how here we are calling as a karma. And a non-karma or inaction, a karma here, for example, is something where the doer, the person who has done that action, doesn't suffer the consequence for it. So a child who is so innocent does an action but doesn't know what it's doing, that is an akarma, whereas a 20-year-old who is doing that same action now is suffering the consequence of it, is going through a karma. So that is the aspect we are taking. So action is that which produces a result for the doer, but that action which does not produce a result for the doer is as good as a non-action. We can give many other examples like this. Here I've taken a very innocent example, but it could be something else also. You're lying in the bed with somebody else, and suddenly in the deep sleep, the person puts the leg on you. Now, at that moment in time, it was done totally without any intention. So any action which is done without any intention of something like that, that is considered again as an akarma. So a person who's able to recognize that in that non-action, in an action, that person is the buddhiman, is a buddhiman manusheshu. It says buddhiman, who is Krishna karma krita, is a yukta purusha. That person is able to see that aspect of an inaction in that action. So what determines then something as karma is not then movement, but it is the presence or absence of any kind of doership. That is an akarmana. So akarmani cha, and now let's look at the second way. So we saw in karmani akarma. Now, how do we recognize an action in an inaction? This is the second part of the thing which we talked about. Like, let's see, suppose, and this happens too, is, suppose you see somebody, the classic example, I think I talked about it last time too, this man, this villager, okay? You have this villager who goes every day, gets up early in the morning at 4 o'clock, and he puts this two things on his shoulder. I'm giving an Indian example here, and he goes to the market to buy stuff and comes back. And every day he does this. He puts his two things on his wrist, he fills it up with whatever, and then he walks back. And then one day he sees this person near the pond. He's just putting pebbles and he's just watching the ripples, and he looks at this guy. Wait a minute, I'm working so much. And here this guy, he just doesn't do anything. He's just, putting these pebbles and watching these ripples. What kind of a guy is this? Now, he doesn't know that that person is actually a great poet. And, he watches his ripples, and suddenly, something goes in his brain and he churns out beautiful poetry, So that kind of a thing is going on. So in non-action, there is a huge amount of action that is happening in his mind, So that is, now you and I may look at something like that and say, that person is just wasting his time. But a wise person, even in that, is able to recognize that there is a lot of action going on. So this is the akarmani cha karmayaha. Or sometimes, you may see somebody pretending to be meditating. Okay, there is, he's sitting quietly, but in reality, there are so many things going on in that person's mind. That person is really not meditating, but is only making a show of the fact that he is actually meditating. So that can also be considered as, just to give you that non-action can be there in action. So this is how karmani cha akarmani, and in akarmani, karmani, So a person who is able to recognize all this, such a person is a wise person. And for such a person, the karmas don't bind him. Okay, that is the thing. Any question, Geeta, before we go to one more way in which this shloka can be explained? So this is purely from a karma standpoint. And we can also explain this from a jnana yoga point of view. Okay, a jnana yoga point is that where a person who is able to see completely this actionlessness. And this is what Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna, because if you remember, Arjuna was actually, trying to tell Krishna, hey, Krishna, you're doing so much. How come this action doesn't bind you? So, Krishna's actionlessness, right? Krishna represents an absolute Brahman, which is, there is no action in Brahman at all. So he's akarmani, there is no action at all. But yet, all those actions are happening. Okay, he himself is totally actionless. The simple example we can think about is like electricity. When we see electricity all over in the form of the bulbs, the refrigerator, the microwave, everything. Microwave is acting and doing things, the bulb is heating and giving us a light. In all this, the electricity by itself is not doing it. Okay, electricity is just doing what it is supposed to be doing, but we are seeing its manifestation in many different ways. So too, Krishna, who represents that absolute Brahman, is really actionlessness, or he's actionless, but then action is all happening too. So a wise person who is able to see that aspect is that he is that person who's wise and who is yukta and etc. So with that, we will stop here and we will continue with the questions. As Geeta had said, that's a good thing. And I'll just say the final prayers and then we'll have a couple of questions. We'll stop the video. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om shanti shanti shantihi. Om purnamadav purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate. Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Let me stop the